let's take a look at players who are over and under performing. Can you do anything with it? Can you trade them away? Can you do, I don't know, we'll find out. Michael Bolton, I'm sure he's got all of the answers. Mick?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I've had it very tough. I was born at a very young age, and for the first year of my life, I couldn't even walk. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky at joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Also, check out LockedOnDaily.com. Go in there and grab yourself a newsletter for your favorite team, LockedOnDaily.com. And of course, you're double bagging here. We're trying to hit to 90,000 subs over on the old YouTube, and I think we'll get there eventually. Canada, we are going to come and save you. We're gonna save you from being Canadian. It's okay. We've got you. We'll be there really, really soon. Okay, so let's take a look at some buy lows and sell highs, and we'll do the recap of how the buy lows and sell highs that we put out there 2 weeks ago. And look, I'll be honest with you, these ones did not go very well at all. And there's a couple of things that we can take out of that. Either I'm terrible at this, which is distinctly possible, right? Like I've got no idea what I'm doing. That's possible. Or there is something that's a little bit different this season, where maybe slumps and hot streaks are just lasting longer. Maybe the sample size of 6 games, 7 games, is just not as useful to us this season. And if that is the case, I have no idea why that would be. But we will see some of these guys, and I look at it and I go, well, surely that should have changed, but it doesn't always. And we keep persisting with this, and at the end of the year, we will do I think we'll do it, as long as I remember, a recap of all buy lows and sell highs throughout the season, and see how all those numbers projected from each of those times that we did that, just to see how it all went, even though understanding that sometimes a buy low and a sell high can be a short-term thing, like you sell this guy here and then he moves worse, and there's been a couple of guys that we're going to talk about in today's show that sort of fall under that banner as well. But let's take a look at the way that all the guys that we took a look at last time out. The first buy low we had was Damian Lillard, and that one worked out incredibly well. He was 37th, and he's 7th since we did that show. Fantastic. Love that. Mikal Bridges was 110th, and then he got worse. And this is where it's a little bit weird, because he was terrible. He's 182nd since we did the show. But the last time that he played, he was very, very good. So if I waited like 3 more games, would Bridges have now be back to being the 80th best player in that time? I guess that's possible. But yeah, like he was bad. And he continues to have some real struggles over that time period. Keegan Murray also stayed about the same. He was 140th. He went to 154th, and I am losing significant faith in Keegan as a long-term category league, standard league player for this season. I think you hold in 12s, but in 10s, maybe not. Jalen Green also got worse. He was 109th, and he got to 135th. Like I said with a lot of these guys, maybe not with Murray as much, but Bridges and Green, I'm very certain that now, even though they've sort of pushed back slightly, that they are going to improve. It's just that you usually expect that stuff to sort of normalize or change within 2 weeks or so, but maybe it's a 3-week thing, maybe it's a 4-week thing. I don't know. And then the Kyle Kuzma one, I'm going to put the numbers up because I'm going to be accountable to it, but he was 155th, and since then he's 297th because he played like a 3-minute game in there or whatever it was with that rib sprain, and then he hasn't played since, really. So that one, that hurts clearly as a accountability thing, but that's the reason on that one. In terms of the sell highs, well, Franz Wagner I had as the 25th best player, but since I did the show, he is 10th. But this one also was one that was, the 2-week period doesn't always add up, because the thing we said about Franz is you got to do the STP LTG. Is that you know that he's going to be still very good while Paolo is out, and then when Paolo comes back, he's going to be worse. And the other thing with Franz is when you do that, you know you're going to take that short-term hit, but you're looking at what happens in January, what happens in February, when he does go cold and then the usage drops and then you've made that win. So I've got no problem with that one where he went from 26th to 10th with Franz because, again, we knew that there was going to be, this is a longer-term investment in terms of moving off of him. Dyson Daniels was 20th, and he's 104th since then. The reality of Dyson is obviously very much in the middle there. His shot attempts and his shooting percentages, more importantly, fell during those 2-week period, but that's going to get better. And we saw him be very good last game against the Pelicans, so he'll be better than that. Josh Hart hasn't really budged. I thought that his field goal percentage, which was some of the best in the NBA, would drop a little bit. He's gone from 42nd to 35th, so that is an improvement. It's a small improvement, but he stayed the same. I still believe that that's a huge sell high, though. Ben Mathurin was a pretty easy sell high. He went from 33rd to 118th. The reality for him is somewhere back, I would say, in the top 100, but we need to know what happens with Neesmith and Nembhard. And then the last one is Jared McCain, who was 52nd. That one was, again, relatively obvious. The stuff that he was doing usage-wise and shooting-wise and packaging those two things together meant that he was putting up huge numbers, becoming unbelievably great, and people were talking so much about him. He just actually won NBA Rookie of the Month for the October-November period, so that people were very much bought in, and now he's coming off the bench in the last game behind Kelly Oubre. He's 181st since we did that, and I think he is a borderline hold in 12-teamers, but that the length of time that I'm willing to do that is actually pretty short. So what should we do? Should we talk about... Every one of these shows I always do buy lows first, but I'm going to mix it up a bit because I know this is what you want to hear. We're going to do sell highs, and this one's for everybody. The long-term fans, the everydayers, the guys who the ride or dies, the ones who really believe in this show and the things that we do, because our first sell high, it has to be. It's Nikola Vucevic. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? Vuce has been insane. Ridiculously good. Vuce is, over the last 2 weeks, the 25th ranked player. He's averaging 42 fantasy points. I do not think that is who he is. Very clearly, I will continue to say this. And I will continue to... this has lasted a long time, very obviously. 6 weeks we're talking here for Vuce to have been as good as he's been. Now, he started off better than this, and then he sort of dropped off a little bit, and he's improved back a little bit again. But the key factor I'll continue to say with Vuce is that his usage is down. It is lower than it was last season. His rebound rate, I believe, is lower than last season. He is just hitting every shot in the world. It is not because DeMar DeRozan is gone that he's getting more usage and more touches, because that is literally not happening. He is taking fewer shots. The usage is lower. He is just hitting every shot. So there are so many things here that I believe are going to fall. People think that I hate Vuce. I just think that he is not a particularly good NBA center, that he's a bad defensive center who has had significant shooting problems all throughout his career. All right, and I thought he was actually one of the worst starting centers in the NBA last season. I said that, but I drafted him in one league. In a roto league, I drafted him because, again, that production is fine. It's all about the value and how you assign that value. So I don't think that he's necessarily going to be a top 50 player rest of season. But that's still a good player. It's just not the guy that's cooking at the moment. 21.3 points per game he's averaging over the last 2 weeks. And the way that he's doing it, it's really obvious why it's happening. 46% on his threes. 67% true shooting. Cool. That's not who he is. This is not who Vuce is. He is not a 46% shooter. Because you know who is a 46% shooter? Nobody. That's not true. Luke Kennard, for multiple seasons. Grayson Allen. That's it. Nobody is a shooter like this. Guy shot 29% from three last season. If you want to bank on a guy being a 17 percentage point, 3-point improver, go for it. I won't. I don't know when it will fall off. I got no idea. It hasn't so far, and so far that prediction of me saying that he shouldn't be a top 50 player is wrong so far. But of course, your playoffs haven't started yet, and we're going to see where it goes. There's also the risk of the trade coming with Vuce. And again, this is not because of a role change. It's just because every single shot in the world is going in. And it continues to go in. And it continues to be, honestly, just mind-blowing that how he's been able to do this. I don't get it at all. I do not get it for a single second. But I'm sure people are going to be like, oh, we love Vuce. He's going to continue to do this. Okay. I don't think he will. I think the three-point shooting will fall. It could conceivably fall 15 percentage points. And then he's, we have 2.6 threes per game that he's making go down to 1.2. He's 21 points a game, go down to 18 points, and then he's an 18 and 10 player, which is still good. It's just not a top 20 player or a top 30 player or a top 50 player. And that is, again, my position on Vooch, and I'll continue to do that, and then we'll assess it. We'll continue to assess it all the way through the season. Guys, we've got more buy lows, sell highs to talk about, but today, the episode is brought to you by the legends over at Game Time and their new feature, Game Time Picks. What does Game Time Picks do? Well, it sorts through all of the tickets and cuts out all of the fluff on the Game Time app to find you the best viewing experience to watch Nikola Vucevic in person. That is all it's designed for. So how do I get the best angle of Vooch with Game Time Picks? It cuts out all other games, all other teams, all other scenarios, just so you can get in there to watch Vooch. Now, of course, that would be the version that I create. The version that Game Time's actually created is just Game Time Picks, which does it for any event and any sporting event and any team. It just gets you the best value tickets, so you don't have to waste your time trying to find that option. It's got the views from your seat on the side as well. It's got the all-in pricing toggle on the app where you can go onto the app and you click that on and it shows you the full price of the tickets, including the fees right there on that ticket. You got everything that you could possibly need. Event protection, event cancellation protection is probably a better way to phrase that. It's all there over on the Game Time app. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. And what do you need to do? Oh, you need to go and download that app. Of course, create the account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA and get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Today's episode is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 individual player stat projections, and you've got a chance to win up to 100 times your money back. It is available in over 30 states in the US, Prize Picks, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And you can win with as little as 4 correct picks 100 times your money. PrizePicks also now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account all the way through the year. So, head across and download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, welcome back to you, legends. We're ready to go through some more sell high options here for fantasy basketball, looking at the play of these guys over the last couple of weeks. And it is, I think, important. I don't even know what's... you know what? Don't worry about what's important. Let's just talk about the next player, who is, of course, Demetrius Ja Morant. Now, Ja has only just returned from his injury, and that's important for me to point out, right? Because I'm aware of that. But honestly, when you're talking about guys who come back and play only a few games, that's when you're talking about a buy low, that becomes more interesting because you go, well, of course, they've only played these few games, things are going to change. But Morant has cooked in those games that he has been played over the last 2 weeks, which I think is 3 games total. He is, over that time frame, the 26th ranked player in category leagues. He's averaged 42 fantasy points, and that has been great. It's 22 points a game. He's averaged 8.7 assists. And he's done all this in like low minutes. So there'll be people who look at that and go, wow, that's amazing. Like, Ja's doing this now. What about when he plays 32 minutes a night? And I understand that, like, idea of it. I understand that rationale behind it. You go, this is great. He's doing this in 26. Give him 7 more minutes. Let's add an extra 20% onto his production. He's going to be cooking as a top 15 player. And I don't believe that's the case. There's a couple of reasons why. Do I have any faith that Ja Morant is going to be a 62% shooter for his twos? Not really. He's running at a 64 true shooting, and this is part of the problem that Morant has had throughout his career, is he has not been a particularly efficient player. So do I have any faith that Morant is going to continue to be that level of efficient? No, not really at all. He's also averaging 1.3 steals, and part of the issue for Morant in category leagues, we know this, is that he has been a very good assist player, a good scorer, but he's really lacked in terms of providing those other peripheral numbers in terms of steals. So he's at 0.8 steals last season, 1.1 the year before that. He's got 4 steals in the last 2 games combined. He's averaging 1.3 steals over his last 3 games. His usage is up at 31% for that time frame, and he's also hitting his free throws. Now, his free throw numbers are wild through his career. What's real? I don't really know. He went from 76 to 75 to 81 in 9 games last season, 81. And this season, he's running at 87% over the last 3 games at almost 8 attempts per game. I don't think I believe that. Ja Morant blocked 0.3 shots and 0.4 blocks his last 2 full seasons. Cool. He's at 0.7, so it's doubled the block rate. Not doubled the steal rate, but like a 50% increase on steal rate. The 2-point percentage, what did he shoot on those? Well, 53, 52, 55. And he's rolling at 62. All right, so all of this stuff is relatively obvious, but some of it's hidden. Right? People just go, Ja Morant, he's awesome, and what if he plays more minutes? All this stuff should rise, and I don't believe it should. So when we're talking, or I don't believe that it will, because I think there's some stuff will rise, the minutes will rise, but I don't know that the production will rise. In a category league point of view, I think Ja is totally okay at around the 40 mark. I think that's totally reasonable to have him in that area, 40s, 50s, whatever it is, however it is you want to position him. I think he's okay in that mid-range area. And the gaps between 40 and 50 aren't that big. But if someone looks at these numbers and goes, well, he's 26, so he's averaging 42 points, he can actually get to 45, 46, then I would be very much interested in I don't know about that. There's a few things here that maybe don't hold to that level. And then that is where I'd be looking to do it, cashing in on the brand name value. Now, you might want to wait to see if there's 1 more or 2 more games of this from Morant, because there is a history of him continuing to get hurt. But you always try and find someone who wants to buy in on the hype, that the value that is Morant and Morant's name is important, and then you see what you can get. If you can get a top 25 player for Ja Morant, I would do it without really any question at all in a category league. In a points league, I'd probably look a little higher, but Memphis has been very steadfast in their minutes limiting and their depth rotation. And that, I think, is going to play a factor here with Morant, who, he averaged 45 and 45 and 45 fantasy points the last 3 seasons. I don't think that he gets there this year, honestly. I don't think he's going to hit that number for this season, because I do believe that they will continue to keep the minutes down. If you don't believe that, then you don't sell high. If you think the minutes will push up and get 33, 34, and he will become a 46 fantasy point guy, you do. That's okay. I think it actually has got some space here to drop off, and we take some focus on trying to sell on that name brand. Let's go to a player in Brooklyn who is absolutely cooking at the moment, and we are talking about Cameron Johnson. Johnson, over the last 2 weeks, is a top 50 player. He's averaging almost 34 fantasy points. That's 20 real-life points, hitting 3.6 triples a game. He's at 4 rebounds, which is obviously not a very high number, but 91 from the line, 53% from the field. And it's a little bit annoying that he just missed that game yesterday on a back-to-back with the ankle sprain, because people will be like, well, we know that Cam Johnson's got a lot of injury problems, so has it started again? And that's true. There are injury concerns with Johnson, but I don't think that ankle one is one of those ones you should be worried about. So what's actually cooking here? Well, very obvious. You know the thing to do, and if you've watched this show a million times, the answer is always look to see what 3-point percentage is doing. 51% on threes over the last 2 weeks. 51%. That brings his overall field goals to 53. That means he's hitting 3.6 threes a game. That means he's averaging 20 points per game. And I just don't think that any of that stuff is realistic. He's only at 20. He's at 23 usage, which is also high during that time frame. And it will stay high while Cam Thomas is out. 2 Cams. So while Thomas is out, Johnson will take more shots. And he is doing the thing which we love from a fantasy capitalization point of view, is that more shots tied in with a shooting hot streak makes everything amplify. It's not quite a logarithmic scale. I just wanted to say logarithmic, but it does amplify the value that someone has. More shots combined with a hot streak looks awesome, and that is exactly what we're getting from Johnson here. He's averaging 0.6 blocks as well, and you might not think that's a lot, but this guy averaged 0.3, 0.3, and 0.2 the last 3 seasons. So when you double your block rate, it does have an impact on overall fantasy rankings or player raters or even fantasy points. Because you're in an ESPN league, a block is 4 points, right? So if it's an extra, if you go from 0.6 to 0.3, it's doubling what you're getting in that area. And 0.6 blocks is, 2.2 blocks or 2.2 points versus you might get normally 1.1 point. So just one extra point. One extra point there. The 3.6 triples a game is, if they're 2.9, it's an extra 1 or 2 points. On everything, every little bit there adds up over that time frame. So I don't think Johnson, I think he's a top 100 player. I don't think that he's a top 50 guy. I don't think he's a top 60 player. And the other thing is, A, there is that injury risk, and B, There is a chance that he is traded or fake injured at the end of the season, and his role just does not remain this way. He has played way more minutes than I expected him to. The shots have gone in at an incredibly high rate. He's also hitting 91% from the line for the season. Last season, 79%. And remember that we banged on and on in the preseason about how free throws, along with steals, are the most variable year-to-year category. And Johnson is one of those examples that's proving that. Like, go from 86, 84, 79, 91. So you can say he's a good free throw shooter, and he is, and last year was down, but now he's just taken it to an extra level and gone up to that incredibly high number. So the usage is up, the shooting is up, the defensive stats are up, all of that is up, and it is going to fall off. It's just, I can't see, again, we can get this stuff wrong at any point. I just don't, well, no one's sticking to 51%. We know that. And then the Thomas addition or re-addition into the mix will be something to pay attention to. We're going to head to Sacramento, and this is, again, trying to take advantage of recent production, recent news, and I have grabbed Malik Monk in any league that I can. I think I have got Malik Monk. I'm just going to double check my numbers here. Out of my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6... How many leagues? What? No, 7 leagues. I've got 7 leagues, and then one of them's and the 8th one is what's the draft and stash league? We don't make any moves. And I've got Monk in 2 of those. I was able to grab him in 2 of those leagues, which is, I'm happy with being able to do that. But this is what we're getting out of him. I think that he's a top 100 guy rest of season and a must-roster player. He's averaging 41 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks since he returned from injury, and now he's been inserted into the starting lineup. And that sort of stuff, it doesn't always, people just go, well, look at him. He's killing it. The minutes are up. They'll stay up, and they could. And now he's starting, and they've recognized it, so let's go. It's Malik Monk time. And sure, but he's averaging 22 points with almost 7 assists, and some of those games came without DeMar DeRozan. He's hitting 4.5 threes a game. He's also blocking a shot per game. Blocking 1 shot per game. This man, if you added up the averages from the last 2 seasons, which of course is not how averages work, but 0.5 blocks and 0.3 blocks the last 2 seasons. 0.4 the year before that. So yeah, safe to say that I don't think he's averaging a block a game. 49% on threes. He's attempting 9.3 triples per game. Probably a number that doesn't stick with a true shooting of 66. What was his true shooting last season? Let's go to those numbers. 56 and 59 and 59. So yeah, there's going to be a pretty significant dip here. I think that he's a clear top 100 player. I think he's a 32 to 35 fantasy point player. He's rolling at 41 fantasy points. He's rolling as a top 35 guy since he returned from injury. And that just isn't a realistic thing. You're not going to get a top 35 player in a trade. And the idea of these shows is not always just about doing trades. It's about understanding what you've got and where that value is going to sit and how can you rely upon this. And when you're building your team, is this going to stick or is this not? Or just be prepared for a crash or be prepared for a boom or doom. Maybe we should rename the show Boom or Doom. I don't know. I guess that sells. So I think there's going to be some regression coming here for Leaky Monk pretty clearly. The last sell high we're going to go to is another guard, and we're going to head across to Phoenix because Tyus Jones is really putting up some big numbers at the moment. It doesn't appear that the Bradley Beals thing is a problem. He's returning today. And Jones is cooking at the moment. 50th ranked player over the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 33.3 fantasy points per game during that time frame. And obviously, that's incredibly strong. But what is Tyus doing that makes me skeptical of it? I guess that's the question you'd want to ask. I think that he's around the 100 to 120th mark in category leagues. I think he's a 27 fantasy point player around that area. So what is he doing over this time period that is making it all look awesome? Well, there are some very, very obvious things. And I'll point this part out. He's also not hitting any free throws at all. He's at 50% over the last 4 games that he's played. 50%. Understanding that is literally 1 of 2. He's taken 2 free throws in 2 weeks, and he's hit 1 of them. All right, so we're talking that he just never gets to the line, so those numbers are going to fluctuate a lot. He will never get there. 9.3 assists per game. What does Tyus Jones do? He does get a lot of assists. That is very, very true. He's at 7.2 for the season. I don't think that he holds at 9.3. But that's not even the most important part here because he's at 1.8 steals. He was at 1.1 last season, 1 the year before that, 0.9 the year before that. Some of those are in limited minutes. 1.8 is an incredibly high number. And then he's adding to that by shooting 50% from 3, 67% on 2s, which is a true shooting over 70%, which puts his field goal percentage over 58%. And even with all of that, he's only averaging 13 points. 13 points. His usage is at 14%. 14.7 to be exact. So he's shooting the absolute lights out, one of the best true shootings in the NBA over that time frame, and he averages 13 with 9 assists. And the 9 assists can become 7. The 1.8 steals become 1.2. He might be a 9-point per game player. He is making everything count, and he just won't. He just won't make that stuff count at that level. And I think when Beal and that are all sort of rolling, there'll be times when he isn't needed out there to close or to handle, which will mean that those assist numbers do drop out, as along with the shooting as well. So what do you do with Tyus? If you could get any top 70 player, you would do it. If you could get a top 80 player, I would probably do that in a trade. And in the points league, obviously, he's just nowhere near as good. To me, he's closer to a waiver wire guy than he is a top 75 player in a points league. But again, rolling at the moment, it is harder from a psychological perspective to move off of a player who's cooking, because that's exactly what he's doing. You go, I love this. This is great. But overall, when you've got to have a common sense approach to the numbers that are coming and how real are they to be able to stick, and these ones are very clearly not real and not going to be able to hold in that level or that capacity. What does that do though? Well, that means we come back and we talk very soon about the guys who are underperforming, and we hope that they're able to fix that up. Today's episode, though, is brought to you by Chime. Yes, we have all been there before. Through the holidays, you've spent more than you should have. You've had your budget, and you go, well, what if I just do this? Or if I go over the top? And well, yeah, it's going to be frustrating. So take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. And you can learn more about that at chime.com/NBA. To date, Chime has spotted members over $32 billion in transactions through SpotMe, friends giving friends a boost. Eligible members get complimentary boosts to temporarily increase a friend's SpotMe limit. And when you give a boost, they can boost you back to temporarily raise your limit. Enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That is chime.com/NBA. Chime, it feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA. Members FDIC, SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs and for OTC withdrawals. Okay. If you're unaware of what we're doing, we're looking at fantasy trades and buy lows and sell highs and just guys who are over and underperforming. And one thing, and someone will ask is, hey, why don't you tell us a name of a player to trade for? I will never do that. There's many reasons for that. Is that I think that I want to make fantasy interesting. I want you to be informed. I want to make it fun and entertaining when we do this. But I also want to make it so that we're teaching, and I don't want to be so like, trade this player for this player, because that takes no context. Like, there's nothing, I can't provide contextual information. I'm not the one having the negotiation with other managers. I don't know what your team looks like or what their team looks like. So if I narrow that sort of stuff down, then you become very narrow in your view and go, well, I've got to trade this player for this player. And you don't explore the other 40 options that are possible. And that's, again, part of the overarching, is that arcing or arching? I don't know. We can interchange those terms. I feel they both can work similarly. Idea about fantasy is that, best player available. It doesn't exist. There are so many guys who are so close, and all it takes is like one missed free throw over a week, and that player goes from 70th to 80th. And now all of a sudden he wasn't the best player. Now he's the third option in that spot. So having a narrow focus on one particular player, I don't think is good business, because then that makes you go, well, Josh said that name, or I've got that name in my head, when there could be someone on every single team in your league who would be a viable target in a buy low or a sell high. And having an idea of what can move and what can drop and ranges and all that sort of stuff, I think is more valuable versus me. Because I can't hold your hand and tell you what you should do in each individual trade for each individual player, because that requires so much context that is impossible to provide. So that is why I don't do that. And I think it would actually be detrimental to you if I did say trade this player for this player. I think that ends up being very detrimental. because it provides too much of a narrow focus and takes all context out of discussion. Yes, agree or not? You might not. I don't know. We'll see. So let's look at the guys who I believe at the moment are underperforming, and we're probably going to get some sort of bump up in their numbers, and we'll start in New Orleans. And no, it's not DeJounte Murray, even though I do believe that he is a little bit of a buy low, especially after shooting 13% in a revenge game yesterday. Ken Murphy, he's back. The minutes are fine. Yes, Ingram is going to return, but honestly, Trey Murphy's a better player than Brandon Ingram. Zion will return, I'm guessing, at some point, and Herb Jones will be there as well. But I think there are times where, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but people do underestimate how good Trey Murphy is, and they just think, well, Trey will just go and play 26 minutes a night coming off the bench when these other guys are back. And I just don't think that is the case. I think that he is very, very good. Yes, he is, and you look at the ranks, like he is struggling. He's averaging 33 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. He's the 101st ranked player over that time, and it is a 6-game sample size, and he's playing 35 minutes, so we're not even talking about a ramp-up process in terms of returning from his injury. And he's sat out some games on back-to-backs, but he played the last back-to-back. He played 29 minutes and 37 minutes, and his last 3 games have been 38, 29, 37 minutes. The 2 games prior to that, 40 and 38. Like, they are rolling him out big minutes. But what is going on at the moment? Why can't he do anything? Well, nothing is just going in. This is an elite shooter who's shooting 32% from 3. He's shooting under 49% on his 2s. That is a 52% true shooting number. 52% is an incredibly low number. You know what he shot last season? 61. You know what his true shooting was the year before? 65. We're talking elite shooting numbers. This is a guy that has had 2 seasons. Now, one of them, last season, only 82 from the line, but the 2 prior, 91 and 82. You're talking about a guy that shot 60-61 from 2 the last 2 seasons. We're talking about a guy that shot his 3-pointers at 41 and 38 and 38 across his first 3 seasons. And now all of a sudden he can't shoot. And that 32% is actually higher than his season number, which is 30.8. So, yeah, I'm very confident that Trey is going to be better than this. I think that we're talking about a top 75 rest of season player. Be very cautious with him though, because when you go to look at rankings, if you go and look on the old Yahoo and they'll show you the fantasy rankings, or even if you look on Basketball Monster and you decide to look at straight 9-cat including turnovers, it'll tell you, well, this guy's actually a second round player. And I'm here to tell you that he's not. He is not a second round player. Those turnovers are obviously incredibly low because he doesn't do anything with the ball in his hands, so to speak. So you're going to get some weird sort of numbers in terms of how you're viewing those projections or numbers. Even if I look at where he is, let's look at what his current Yahoo rank is at the moment. He's listing him as 102nd on a season average, which again is not that far off. But just be aware of those turnover numbers, which actually at 1 per game, there's a chance that he's actually able to go lower than that. To be honest, he's not a high turnover player at all, and that's something to watch there. But what we do want to take or pay attention to with Trey is just the shooting. Like the free throws, the 3s, the 2s. He's getting the triple whammy where all of his shooting numbers are down. That means his field goals are down. That means his scoring's down. That means his 3-pointers per game are down. And yeah, look, maybe he isn't a 35-minute-a-night player, but I think he's going to be 30+, and I think he's going to be 30, 40, 50 spots better than this. I think his fantasy points will be 35 to 36 a game. He's currently at 33, and I feel pretty good about Trey. And I also think there's a lot of skepticism about him at the moment. So I think that acquiring him, because I've had people tell me they're going to drop him, which I don't. I understand why they're doing it. I think it's silly. Like, he's currently only 86% rostered on Yahoo, which again is pretty silly. So people are not really believing necessarily. And that means that there is an opportunity to grab him off the wire if that's what ends up happening, but also to be able to buy low in any sort of deal. I'd be very, very interested in doing that. This one may not be as obvious, but it's happening because Jarrett Allen at the moment is just not producing the numbers that you want. He is 94th over the last 2 weeks. He's down to only 30 fantasy points a game. He's averaging just 13 real-life points. 13. And that is obviously not what you want out of Jarrett Allen. Is it because he's been injured? Not really. Are the Cavs any different in terms of who's available? Also, not really. It's just some very weird things going on. Now, his usage is down. It is low. We're talking 13 usage for Jarrett Allen. For the season, Jarrett Allen is running, and why do I keep saying Jarrett Allen like that? But he was a 16 usage player this season. Last season, he was incredibly high at 19.5% usage. He's down at 13, and over the last 3 games, he's at 10% usage. His minutes are also down, but we're aware of that. Like, he's at 28 minutes a night over the last 6, and we know that that is what Kenny Atkinson's going to do, but that's not really the point here. Bro has blocked 2 shots over his last 6 games. Now, he's only at 1.1 blocks last season, and 1.2 the year before that. He's only at 1 this season, so we're not a 2 block per game guy. But he can triple his number and still be below expectations. He's just not blocking shots. He's also not hitting free throws, and one of the values of Allen is he's not a free throw destroyer. 74 and 73 the last 2 seasons, 74 this season. Last 6 games, 67. He's also not taking many free throws at all. He was at 4 last year, 2.5 at the moment, which of course is not like a negative thing when you're hitting lower numbers. You're okay, you want the lower volume, but I think that's all about usage and touches and getting more of the ball and more scoring. Also assists. Do we think that he's a great assist player? Not really, but he did average 2.7 last season. He's at 1.5 at the moment. Maybe he's not a 2.7 guy. Maybe he is under 2. But there's plenty of scope for that to improve. But the obvious ones here are the free throws are going to jump and the blocks are going to jump. Like, I'm very confident those blocks are going to jump up. And that's probably all you really need here with Jarrett, who is, I think, in a 50 to 65 sort of a rest of season range, a 34 to 36 fantasy point player. And at the moment, he's not that guy. Like, he's not anywhere close to that. He is, struggling. The usage is down. The minutes are down. Not blocking any shots. And you would know this yourself, and you would have talked about it yourself with him or other players. You'd be like, why have I got a center who's not blocking shots? You're 7 foot tall, block shots. You're 7 foot tall, grab rebounds. Like, we hear that all the time. So at the moment, Jarrett Allen's not doing any of that. He's not, well, the rebounds are fine, but he's not blocking the shots, and that's, I guess, what you want out of a center. And he's not bringing it. So, there is room here for you to be able to get a little bit of value back in a deal, and for Allen to be able to improve the production that we're getting out of him. Let's go to Minnesota. Is Julius Randle good or a good fit? Don't know. Probably not, actually. And that's really been the case for Julius Randle through a lot of his career. He is struggling, though, at the moment, 102nd over the last 2 weeks, just 34 fantasy points. He's averaging under 20 points per game. I'm not here to tell you how great Julius Randle is and he's going to be an awesome player and he fixes the Wolves' problems, because he's frustrating and he's frustrated me for years. He's a bad body language legend. He's a bad defender. He's at times a guy that can dominate the ball. But there are things that are happening with his game at the moment which don't really add up to the things that we've seen from Julius Randle in the past. Randle hit 1.73s a game last season. He's at 1.6 this season. He was at 2.8 the year before that. And over the last 6 games, he's hit 1.3 a game. Is that because he's not taking them? Not really. He's just at 25%. Now, we can argue whether he's a good 3-point shooter or not, and that's okay. He might not be good. But he's also rolling over the last 15 games at 28% from 3. That is an extended cold streak. I think that he's going to be better than that. So that will bump up. The assists are only at 3.2. Now, he's at 4.1 this season. He was at 5 last season. Do the Wolves have all these amazing passes and ball handlers? Not really. So maybe there is a change that needs to happen here where Randle has to get the ball in his hands a little bit more and do more facilitating, because those assist numbers are low. His last 6 games, 3-2-3, 4-4-3. Right? They're not the numbers you expect from Julius Randle. He also, and he is not a defender. Do you know how many shots he's blocked this season? Evan Fournier looks at this and go, bro, can you do something? 1. He's blocked 1 shot a game. No, sorry, not a game. 1 shot for the entire season, Julius Randle. Blocked 1 shot. Again, not a good shot blocker. But he blocked 12 in 46 games last season, 21 the year before that, 39 the year before that. And you might not think that matters. But it does. You go from what is he last season? A 0.3 blocks guy to 0.1? Okay, terrible. It's a big drop, man. Has not blocked a shot since. What is the date? The 8th of November. So we're closing in on a month without blocking a single shot. Pair that in with not getting threes and not hitting them, and also ball handling responsibilities down. I think that Randle is able to be better than this from a fantasy points perspective by 3 to 4 extra points. I think that for category leagues, he's about 100th at the moment. I think he can be top 70, top 75 at least. And there'll be people that continue to be frustrated with him, and I understand that. very clearly understand that he's frustrating, he's annoying, and he's be annoying to players as a teammate, and he causes problems in a lot of different spots with his play style. But from us as a fantasy point of view, look, there are very clear things here that have to improve and will almost definitely improve with Julius Randle. Let's go to the Chicago Bulls, because as much as I can talk about Vooch being someone who is outperforming expectations, Coby White at the moment is struggling. Over the last 2 weeks, he's 149th, and he's out with an ankle injury today. He's averaging under 27 fantasy points. Now, I was down on Coby White this season. He was going way too high in some spots for me. People were at times drafting him in the 50s. That was on some weird ESPN leagues, but like 70s and 80s. Like, I'm not sure about this. With the influx of other guards, with him spending time off ball, and his inconsistency, I'm a little worried. But this has also gone way past anything I thought could have been the problem. He is, like I said, out. He's basically, over the last 2 weeks, not a rosterable 12-team league guy. 26 fantasy points is also bad. Okay, that's all well and good. Minutes are down. That's number one thing. But 14 points a game? Bro, come on. Last season, he averaged 19 points a game. He's at 14. He's also playing 5 fewer minutes a game, which is notable. 14 points a game. He's at 2.5 threes per game, and I think he should be hitting 3 a game. He might not, but I think he should. He's not a steals or blocks guy, but 0.7 steals and 0.2 blocks. There should be some improvement in, especially the steals. 38% from the field. Okay? He's at 44 for the year. He's at 45 last year. He's at 44 the year before that. Going to be an improvement. Free throw attempts. He's not getting to the line at all. 2.7 attempts is very, very low. He's hitting under 32% from 3. His true shooting's at 52%. These are all really obvious things. I don't think he's a 20-point-per-game scorer. He's not a 20-7 sort of a guy. He's not. I think he's like an 18-4, 19-4 sort of a guy. I think that there are very clear things here. Field goal attempts, free throw attempts, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, steal numbers, scoring, all needs to rise. He should be 30-plus fantasy points easily. And while he is injured, it probably makes it a little bit easier to buy low, because the person will be like, how long is he going to be out for? Are they going to fake tank him or whatever they're going to do and sit him down? I think that you have got an ability here, again, without going crazy and thinking he's a top 50 player, because he isn't, like as a top 80, top 90 guy, I think he's able to do that. He's able to improve from where he's at pretty comfortably. But yeah, it's in a huge slump at the moment, and it's not about other players necessarily even taking the shots off him. It's just about that they're not going in. And yeah, his ball handling responsibilities are low, and I'm not really sure that changes. But it's more about just things just not going in. And also, why are his steals at 0.7? Right? Not expecting him to be a high steals guy, but there should be an ability for that to improve. I would say not relatively quickly, but that can turn around very fast, and that should be able to help Coby get back in business. Lastly, let's go to Houston, because I've also had people tell me that they are dropping Tari Eason, and I don't agree with it. I don't agree that you should be dropping Tari Eason, because yes, it is a struggle at the moment, and he has been, like, at the start of the year, didn't really play much at all. Came in, started being part of that defensive terror group along with Amen Thompson coming off the bench. And I've given you some skepticism about, hey, when you come off the bench, there's a lot more variability, a lower floor, lower ceiling for playing time, and that still remains true. But this is a bad stretch from Eason. He's 116th over the last 2 weeks. He's averaging 27 fantasy points. He's at 9 real-life points a game. 9. Now, he is, I believe, better than this. He's only playing 22 minutes a night during that time frame as well. Now, we've saw periods when he was getting 27, 28. He had that run where he had like a couple of like 40 games, I think. Let me double check that. No, he had a 35-minute game, 27, but he's only played over 30 minutes twice. But the problem is in the last 2 weeks, he's had 2 games under 20 minutes, a 19 and an 18 game, which were really, really, really quite bad. In fact, in both of those games, he didn't hit a single shot. He was 0 of 12 combined. So, he's a guy that has had some solid passing in the past, but 1 assist a game. Under 10 points, 0.7 threes, 38 from the field, 24 from 3, 44 from 2. It's very easy to love what Tari Eason does. It's very easy to go overboard on what Tari Eason does, but it's also easy to go overboard the opposite direction and go, well, maybe he is just trash. And, like, yeah, he's not a 38% shooter. Irrespective of what you think of him as a shooter, and he's not a good 3-point shooter, that I'm very confident in saying he is not a good 3-point shooter. but he's also not a guy that's going to be 24% or 44% on twos, or averaging 9 points a game, or shooting 28 or 48% true shooting. This is a player that should be rostered in all spots. Points leagues, not as important as in category leagues. That is true. He's not as good in those sort of formats. But to me, this is very clear. If someone drops, you add, or you just throw like your worst 2 players in a deal and see what you can do. Because this is almost bottom of the barrel stuff. And he's still getting 2.3 steals and 0.8 blocks. It's just that people will obsess about the scoring. They'll obsess about the way that he's impacting field goals. And those 2 0 for games, the 0 for 7 and 0 for 5 in 2 consecutive games, will have really soured some. And if it's you, and that's part of the idea of a buy low, sell high, if you've got Tari Eason, you should be going, okay, like maybe I'll settle down on how I view this, because that's not a real thing moving forward. And if you don't have him, well, then maybe you see if someone's in full panic mode about where we sit with Eason and about where his production may lie. So that was a buy low, sell high, underperforming, overperforming player show. Tell me, do you have anyone else that you would chuck onto that list? I'm sure there's others like Tyrese Halliburton. You can put him on there, no problem. But I didn't want to, because he had that really strong stretch as well last week, and now the last couple of games have been pretty poor. We know that, but these are some names to talk about. Let me go through the list of the other names that I did have as potentials to talk about. LeBron was one that I considered there as a buy low. De'Aaron Fox was considered there. DeMar DeRozan, although he hasn't played many games in that period of time. I threw Brandon Ingram on there, even though that's a small sample size of games as well. In terms of some of the sell high options on there, Larry Markkinen, John Collins, but Collins is the one I included yesterday. Also last week, PJ Washington, I also included him last week. There are a few guys who sort of had that number. Oh, the other one was Dennis Schroeder, was another name that I considered to put onto the sell high list. What you need to do though, right now, is hit the old thumb up button on this video. But also remember, let's be good. Let's be good to ourselves. Let's recognize goodness. Let's understand that our mindset and the way we treat others is important. And there's that boring old phrase of treat others the way that you would want to be treated. And while there's some nonsense towards around that and the way that it gets trotted out so tritely, just having more of a positive idea and positive mindset does help you in so many interactions. And I try and live by this as much as I can. And I want you guys, especially when you're feeling down, to recognize that you did something good. And you are going to be able to do those good things continually. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.